Hey there, dear listeners. Welcome back to the channel. Today, in our regular daily broadcast, we'd like to share a short story with you. Now, without further ado, let's dive right in. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the tale. What a day. I busted my butt, and for what? Absolutely nothing. Lena turned her back to Hank, pouting and pulling the blanket closer. She muttered under her breath. Go get some help, why don't you? Other women get to enjoy being married. Look at me, stuck with you, a good-for-nothing husband. What kind of man can't even satisfy his own wife? Tomorrow, Evan brings his new car home. You better get your act together and cook dinner for him. Hearing his wife complain, Hank just kept quiet, a deep crease forming on his forehead as he rested his chin on his hand. It was a secret sorrow Hank had been shouldering for a long time now. Winning over Lena, the beautiful girl from uptown, had taken years of relentless effort. He finally won her heart after 3 long years, but now. Hank was a good man, kind and honest. He loved his wife and son dearly. However, when it came to intimacy, he just couldn't perform like he used to. This had become a constant source of tension between him and Lena. The physically demanding nature of his work as a mechanic, combined with the tough working conditions, had taken a toll on him, leaving him with little energy for anything else. They had been married for more than 3 years, and their son was already 3 years old. Yet, their family had never known a day of peace. Lena constantly looked down on him. Hank was painfully aware of his shortcomings and his inability to satisfy his wife's needs. He felt trapped, enduring her disdain and carrying on with his life, day after day. It was because of this that Lena always seemed to pick fights with him. What did she expect? A woman her age, already a mother, still so attractive and full of life. How could she possibly be content? There were times when the arguments got so heated that Lena would threaten to divorce him. To the outside world, Hank and Lena seemed like the perfect couple. Little did anyone know that behind closed doors, their marriage was a raging inferno. Lena never missed an opportunity to nag. If you know you have a problem, why don't you get it fixed? She had no clue that Hank had been secretly seeking treatment, but to no avail. He had tried everything, but nothing seemed to work. Every time Hank heard stories about men who couldn't satisfy their wives and ended up being cheated on, his heart sank. He worried, but he felt powerless. All he could do was stay silent and trudge on with his life. Hank's parents had passed away, leaving him with just one sibling, his younger brother Evan, who lived next door. Evan was still single. He had worked at the Willow Creek Industrial Park for a while but was now planning to buy a car and start a local transportation service. Now approaching 30, Evan was a man of few words, well liked by everyone who knew him. He always lent a helping hand whenever his family needed him. When Liam was around 2 years old, Hank and Lena's marriage began to unravel. Their life together became a chaotic mess. It was during these tumultuous times that Evan often found himself playing mediator between the couple. As a result, Evan and Lena began to develop a close bond. Lena found solace in confiding in her brother-in-law, sharing every little detail of her marital woes. Over time, it became a habit for her to confide in him about everything, from major conflicts to trivial matters. Unintentionally, Evan became privy to all the inner workings of their marriage. Truth be told, Evan had developed a bit of a soft spot for his sister-in-law. Whenever they had something delicious to eat or planned a gathering, Lena would insist on inviting him over. And if something needed fixing around the house, Evan was her first call. Lena always made sure she looked her best around Evan, taking extra care with her appearance. Slowly but surely, a forbidden attraction began to blossom between them. Evan found himself drawn to his sister-in-law, her beauty lingering in his thoughts. Whenever Lena asked for anything, Evan would drop everything and rush to her aid. On the other hand, Lena, starved for affection and physical intimacy, started looking elsewhere to fulfill her desires. And who better to target than Evan, her husband's younger brother, who was clearly smitten with her. While Lena was short-tempered and demanding with her husband around Evan, she was a completely different person. She was all soft smiles and gentle touches, throwing in suggestive comments and accidental brushes against him, practically begging him to make a move. Living next door with a shared yard only provided more opportunities for their paths to cross. Lena would often find excuses to, casually, stroll in front of Evan, flaunting her figure in revealing outfits whenever he was home or returning from work. In the evenings, she'd send Liam over to Evan's place to play, giving her an excuse to linger. Evan, aware of Lena's flirtatious nature and her obvious interest in him, couldn't help but entertain improper thoughts about his brother's wife. Evan, in turn, made sure to present himself as the epitome of virility, a stark contrast to his brother. With Hank seemingly unable to satisfy his wife, and Evan constantly radiating energy and attention towards Lena, it was only a matter of time before sparks flew. The air crackled with unspoken tension, their playful banter becoming increasingly suggestive. Gone were the days of subtle flirting. They now engaged in blatant innuendos, their gazes locking with a hunger that could not be ignored. They understood each other perfectly, their mutual attraction undeniable, just waiting for the right moment to erupt. That day arrived when Evan bought his new car. To celebrate, he threw a huge party, inviting all his friends, family, and relatives. The festivities went on late into the night, and by the time everyone left, Hank was completely wasted, sprawled unconscious on the floor. Lena, exasperated and disgusted by her husband's state, unleashed a torrent of venomous words at him. Disheartened by the sight of her drunken husband, she looked at Evan, who had had a few drinks himself but was still relatively sober. "Evan," she purred. "Could you help me get him to his bed?" Evan didn't hesitate. Setting aside the plates he was clearing, he effortlessly lifted Hank into his arms, with Lena supporting the other side. Together, they half-carried, half-dragged Hank back to his house. As they reached Hank's bedroom, Evan and Lena exchanged knowing smiles, their eyes locking in a moment of unspoken desire. Evan's left hand remained firmly on his brother's back, while his right hand instinctively snaked around Lena's waist. Whether intentional or not, his touch lingered, and when Lena didn't object, Evan allowed his fingers to gently caress her back. It seemed Lena was giving him the green light. After carefully depositing Hank onto his bed, Evan turned to Lena. "He's really out of it, huh?" he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Lena giggled softly. "Oh, trust me, he's useless even when he's sober," she said, rolling her eyes. "I'm so sick of him. How about I come over to your place for a while? I'll help you clean up." With a mischievous glint in her eye, Lena dashed into Liam's room to check on him, then hurried over to Evan's house. They worked together, clearing away the remnants of the party, their laughter echoing through the house. It was clear that their thoughts were far from innocent. "Leaving your poor husband to starve, huh?" Evan teased, a sly grin spreading across his face. Lena blushed, her voice barely above a whisper. "He wouldn't even notice if I starved. Besides," she added, her eyes meeting Evan's, "it's not like he has much of an appetite these days anyway." Quote. "What do you mean?" Evan chuckled. "What does it take to get a man in that good of shape, you ask? Maybe you should try it sometime." Quote. "Well, if you're offering." Lena purred, her voice heavy with innuendo. With a flirty smile, she picked up a stack of dirty dishes and headed toward the kitchen sink. As Lena rinsed the dishes, her cheeks flushed crimson, her composure betraying the turmoil of anticipation brewing within her. Evan, emboldened by the alcohol coursing through his veins and fueled by Lena's undeniable allure, followed her into the kitchen. He stood close behind her, his gaze lingering on her every move. Unable to resist any longer, Evan reached out and gently pulled Lena into his arms, his touch sending shivers down her spine. He expected resistance, a playful protest, but Lena simply stood there, her silence speaking volumes. After a beat, she turned to face him, her voice barely a whisper. "Evan, what are you doing? Someone might see." But her words lacked conviction, her body remaining pliant in his embrace. Knowing he had her tacit consent, Evan leaned in close, his lips brushing against her forehead. "Don't worry," he murmured, his voice husky with desire. "If Hank can't keep you satisfied, I will." Quote. And with that, Lena melted into his arms. Evan's touch, his words, ignited a fire within her, and she found herself powerless to resist. She closed her eyes, her lips parting slightly as Evan's kisses trailed down her neck. All thoughts of her husband, of right and wrong, vanished into thin air. She was his, completely and utterly. The dirty dishes piled up in the sink, the garbage left unattended outside, none of it mattered in that moment. Evan and Lena were lost in a whirlwind of passion, their bodies entwined, their inhibitions cast aside. Right there, in Evan's kitchen, they shamelessly consummated their forbidden desires, while Hank lay passed out next door, oblivious to his wife's betrayal. The pent-up frustration Lena had endured for so long finally gave way to a wave of pleasure, her body surrendering to the intoxicating sensations. She reveled in Evan's touch, her eyes reflecting a mixture of lust and admiration. Fueled by alcohol and driven by his desire to possess his brother's wife, Evan was insatiable, determined to prove himself a better lover than Hank could ever be. Lost in the throes of passion, their cries of ecstasy filled the room. "Oh, Evan. That's amazing. I need you so much." Lena moaned. In that moment, they were no longer themselves. They were slaves to their primal urges, their actions a betrayal of trust and a violation of their family bonds. Lena's mind was consumed by pure, unadulterated pleasure, all thoughts of her husband and the consequences of her actions vanishing like smoke. "Did you enjoy that, baby? Do you want to do it again sometime?" Afterward, as they lay entangled in each other's arms, Lena whispered into Evan's ear. Evan, his ego stroked, grinned triumphantly. "Lena, you're incredible," he breathed, his fingers tracing the curve of her hip. "How could any man resist you? Just come over anytime. My door is always open." Quote. Lena's heart soared. She had found a solution to her marital woes, a way to satisfy her needs without ever having to go without again. Lena practically skipped back home, a newfound spring in her step. Gone was the frustrated, bitter woman who had left only moments before. In her place was a woman glowing with satisfaction, her eyes sparkling with a mischievous secret. From that day forward, their affair became a regular occurrence. They stole every opportunity they could find, whether it was while Hank was away at work or even under his very nose. Sometimes, Evan would whisk Lena away to Motel 6, their secret rendezvous a world away from the prying eyes of their families and neighbors. Their scandalous acts became as commonplace as their daily meals, yet no one suspected a thing. Hank, ever the trusting and oblivious husband, remained none the wiser. He was too preoccupied with his own problems to notice the subtle changes in his wife's behavior. All he saw was that Lena seemed happier, less irritable, and the tension that had plagued their marriage seemed to have dissipated. Even the once frequent arguments over meals had become a distant memory. He was also pleased to see the growing bond between his wife and brother. Little did he know that his newfound happiness was built on a foundation of lies and betrayal. Meanwhile, Lena and Evan grew bolder with each passing day, their affair becoming increasingly reckless. They no longer cared if Hank was home or not, their desire for each other eclipsing all reason and caution. There were even times when Lena would sneak over to Evan's house while her husband was home, their trysts a testament to their audacity and their utter disregard for Hank's feelings. Poor Hank, so naive and true, completely unaware of the horns sprouting from his head. But as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end, and the truth, however ugly, always has a way of rearing its head. One fateful afternoon, a few days before the annual town festival, Lena announced she was going to Oakville for a friend's birthday party. "Don't wait up, honey," she chirped, giving Hank a quick peck on the cheek. "I'll be home late." Hank, ever trusting, didn't think twice about it. He was happy to have the evening to himself with Liam. The thought of his wife being anything but faithful never even crossed his mind. Around 8 that evening, as Hank and Liam were finishing dinner, his phone rang. It was Mark, a coworker, his voice urgent. "Hank, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think I just saw Lena with Evan, at the Motel 6 in Maplewood. They were walking in together." Quote. Hank's blood ran cold. "No way, Mark, you've got it wrong. You must have mistaken them for someone else," he insisted, his voice shaking. The idea of his beloved Lena, his own wife, checking into a motel with his brother was unfathomable. But Mark was adamant. "I'm telling you, Hank, I saw them with my own 2 eyes. I recognized Evan's car." Quote. Doubt gnawed at Hank's gut. He had to know for sure. After dropping Liam off at his in-laws, Hank raced to the motel, his mind a storm of confusion and dread. As he pulled into the parking lot, his heart sank. There, parked in the dimly lit basement garage, was Evan's car. Hank sprinted up the stairs, his heart pounding in his chest. He burst through the door of the room Mark had indicated, only to be met with a sight that shattered his world. There they were, Lena and Evan, naked and entangled on the bed, caught red-handed. Hank crumpled to the floor, the reality of his wife's betrayal hitting him with the force of a physical blow. His perfect life, his happy marriage, all of it a cruel illusion. The pain was unbearable, a searing agony that ripped through him, leaving him hollow and broken. How could they do this to him? Hank's world came crashing down around him. His family was destroyed, his brother gone, his marriage shattered. Evan, consumed by guilt and shame, sold his car and fled to Granite Falls to start over. Lena, faced with the consequences of her actions, was left with no choice but to sign the divorce papers and leave the only home she had ever known. Hank was devastated, the pain of their betrayal a heavy weight on his soul. He had to be strong for Liam, for his son who deserved a happy and stable upbringing. And so, Hank picked up the pieces of his broken heart and moved forward, facing the whispers and judgment of their community with his head held high. Life went on, and in a twist of fate, in late 2020, Hank made the difficult decision to forgive Lena and allow her back into his and Liam's life. He yearned for a complete family for his son, a home filled with the love of both a mother and a father. He pushed aside his own pain and resentment, choosing to believe in second chances. But whether Lena had truly changed, whether she regretted her actions and would remain faithful, or whether she would succumb to temptation once more remained to be seen. Only time would tell if she had learned from her mistakes or if she was destined to repeat the same patterns of betrayal. Thank you for listening to our story. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales. Don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your thoughts and feelings about the story. We appreciate your support. Until next time.